Hello. Okay, let me know if the sound is okay. Last week we had a little bit of a kerfuffle with the microphone. So I want to make sure everything is good. It looks like I can't tell if it's working or not. Says it's working, but I don't know. Okay. Everything should be good. Let me know if it's coming across gravelly or whatever. Last week it sounded like a bunch of googly gook. So I am doing a impromptu live because last week I did not get around to it. We are going to a funeral tomorrow. My husband's uncle died on his dad's side, so we are going to that funeral tomorrow. And hi, Marta, in Southern Illinois. It's about 5 hours away. So as soon as church is done, everything's packed, we're just headed down there, spend the night. Hey, Julia. Julia's right over in the other room. So if you hear background noise, it's because I'm at the church. There's kids running around and, people here and everything. So I wanted to get a live in since I did not get to one last week. Life right now is incredibly crazy and full, and I'm just getting lives in whenever I can. My schedule might be sporadic. I teach Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously, I homeschool Monday through Friday, and then I teach Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Pretty full days. I have 40 students. And so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I don't teach piano. However, every day is full. So Friday, I went and picked up my grandson, and he ended up staying with us overnight. And then yesterday, I went and dropped him off so my son could take my daughter-in-law on a nice romantic Valentine's. And so I dropped him off yesterday. Well, then today is church. Then we have the funeral and all day tomorrow. So we're going to get back late Monday night and then right back into the schedule for the week. Abigail's wedding is getting closer and closer. So the month of April is going to be really crazy. I'm telling you that. So I'm just kind of fitting it in because I love all of you and I love our group. If you have not joined our group on Facebook, please do. Gently Led Sisters group. It is a private group. You can search it up and then ask to join. So you can join our group on there. We have almost 500 members on there, and we just talk about motherhood related things, different things like that, all about being a Proverbs 31 wife and mom. So you can find us on there, and I check in there. I share my writings and different things I do on my own Facebook. I share into the group. So you can also follow me on Facebook. Everything I do is public, but life is full right now. So I was sitting in church this morning and I'm thinking, what can I do a live on really quickly? Well, it's around Valentine's Day, right? So I decided to just do one along the lines of the greatest of these being love, because I do believe that in order to be a good wife, be a good mom, and be a good Christian, love has to be the foundation of everything that you do. And so I have no outline. I'm just going to kind of freestyle it today. But I did want to talk about this subject of love, and I did write a post about it. So I'm going to read the post that I did about this subject. And then I'm going to kind of go over some of the things, some of the ways that I've incorporated love into my own life of being a wife, a mom, and a Christian. So, and this is the post, and I put the verse on there, that verse right there. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity. Obviously, charity is another word for love in the Bible. And the two greatest commandments, we know what those are: love the Lord thy God, and then love thy neighbor as thyself. So those are the two greatest commandments. I believe as a Christian, if you put all of those two greatest commandments into practice, then everything falls into place. Everything. So let me read this really quickly, and then we'll kind of go over some areas where I've tried to incorporate this foundation of love into my own life when raising children, because I do believe it's so important. As someone who has observed people all of my life, I'm careful about the advice and influence that I allow in my home. This pertains to relationships within the home with my husband and my kids. I count those as the most important ones there are, and I don't want to mess them up. I only get one life to live, and I want to live it well. That being said, if you wear a skirt, but you are a mean girl at heart, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. If you pound the pulpit and beat your chest about standards and holy living, but treat your wife like garbage, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. If you teach about femininity and grace, but show your husband contempt and disdain, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. If you look the part and have every standard, known to mankind, don't watch movies, don't drink, but are mean-spirited and nasty to others, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. If you teach about keeping the home, are against public schools, are pro homeschooling, and teach good things about raising kids, but you raise kids who hate you, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. If you teach about loving and respecting your husband, but are mean and nasty to those who disagree with you or even have questions, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. The type of Christianity that I am interested in, and the one I am raising my kids with, is one that has love as the foundation. Love for God, love for your spouse, love for your kids, love for others. You can have standards and be kind. You can disagree with others and be kind. You can be for holy living and be kind. None of us will be perfect in our marriage. None of us will be perfect parents or perfect friends. But if love is the foundation of all of our relationships, they will flourish even with mistakes. That's the type of Christianity I want. And that's the type of Christianity that I've raised my children with too. So I just want to say that obviously I am IFB. I consider myself IFB. And as such, being married to a pastor who oftentimes has to get up and preach about uncomfortable things, right? He's often preaching against sin, against fornication, against, homosexuality, against drinking, against drugs, against corrupt communication coming out of your mouth. Like there's all these areas he's preaching against. Oftentimes you will get labeled as someone who hates because of that. But I will say you can be against sins and not be a hateful person. Okay. So, and there is a way to go about that. Now, me as a woman, obviously, I'm not going to be getting up and preaching. I'm not going to be, I try not to come across preachy, although the haters probably say I am, but that's just because they don't like me and what I'm saying. But as IFB in general, they are often considered to be, if they're against sin, then they just must be mean or jerks or whatever. And it's funny because those, my husband, okay, why did my microphone change? I don't know. Okay, sorry. The microphone thing is like doing weird things. So tell me if the sound gets weird after a while. And I think that did this for my husband the other day too, which is why his audio was all messed up when it came across his live stream. He kind of had some messed up audio. I'm going to try not to bump it at all. Maybe that's the problem. Okay, it's back on the Scarlett microphone. So I'm going to try not to bump the cord. Maybe that's the issue. Me and my sound stuff, I do not mesh well with technology at all. But I think that there is a fine line between being against sin and then just not coming across as a total jerk, and even with our own family, I've grown a lot in this because when I was younger, when I was 20s, maybe even into my early 30s, I tended to be a lot more, a lot more judgmental and a lot more harsh when it came to people than I am now. Obviously, our goal is to grow every year as a Christian. Our goal is to become better this year than we were last year. And being in the ministry has taught me a lot of things along the way. And this is one area that I have had to soften myself when it comes to, yes, I have a certain way that I believe, I have a certain way I live, but am I coming across in love or am I coming across harshly? And so this is something that I have had to be aware of, make sure that I am coming across in love, making sure everyone around me, my friends, my kids, my husband, know that I love them first and foremost. And then being careful with how I say things, how I communicate things, different things like that. So when it comes to just standards in general, obviously for my family, we do have certain standards in place. We are your typical Baptists. So we don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't cuss. We're careful about what movies we watch, all that type of thing. However, that being said, I've often tried to tell my kids when raising them, we're McMurtry's and that's why we do this. So this is the rule in the McMurtry home. This rule, though, might not be in the Smith home or the Jones home. And if they do things differently than us, that doesn't make them evil. It doesn't make them wicked. It doesn't make them some horrendous sinner. They just don't see things the way we do. And the way we've raised our kids is that we don't go along with man-made standards. just because a certain group does it or a certain group doesn't do it. Okay. We believe that all of your standards should be derived from the Bible and what the Bible says about it. So we want to have biblical backup for what we believe and what we practice. I would say, like, even when it comes to the area of movies, this is one area where IFB pastors in the past, I think they kind of went over the top when it came with this. I know Larry Brown is famous with his sermon where he smashes the television up on stage. And like his kids will tell you, they did not have a TV in their home growing up. And so he kind of went to this extreme. Whereas with me, I always think a little balance. I don't think the movies in and of themselves are evil. I think sometimes it's okay to have something that you can sit down and just chill together as a family, as long as it's clean and there's nothing raunchy in it, or, the cussing or the nudity, different things like that. So you have to be careful if you're in a certain group and okay, they don't go to the movie theater, they don't even watch movies at home, they don't even believe in having a TV, all this stuff, that you're not morphing into that just to be accepted. You need to have a biblical basis for why you're doing things. And one of the things might not be, or one of the things with not having a television or having television, you might know yourself. And let's say that you struggle with watching things for hours. So you struggle with addictions, you struggle with not turning the TV off if a wrong scene comes on. So you and you know your limitations. So you might just decide no television at all in my home. And that's fine. That's great for your home. But let's say another family, they don't struggle that way. They're able to skip past the parts that they don't want their kids seeing. They're able to screen movies or not allow movies that have, different cuss words on it and things. And so for them, they don't have that standard. Well, with my kids, I've always tried to tell them, you need to have a standard because you believe it, not because, you're doing it just to fit in a church or you're doing it to fit in a group. Another area that we have standards in our life is where it comes to like dress standards, right? So I've often said that it didn't matter if the entire world dressed a certain way. I would still dress how I believe a woman should dress. And for me, that is skirts and dresses only. I know in today's day and age, it's getting more and more rare that you'll see a family with the girls all in skirts. That being said, do I think it would be like this mortal sin if I'm in a situation where I have to put on a pair of pants because I don't know, being parachuted out or, just some extreme situation? I would do that not knowing. In that case, it's okay because, that's not violating my conscience or whatever. But overall, I don't think it's like this mortal sin that God's going to strike me dead for, is what I'm saying. But I know for me and my girls, we do want to look like women in a world where they're blurring the lines between sexes. We want to look like women when they're trying to, say it's okay for men to look like women and women to look like men. That's just a standard that we have. That being said, when it comes to the love part, we're going to do, I've been, and I'm IFB, so I grew up with this. I've been in churches where teen youth groups where they were like nice to a teen girl's face. And then behind her back, they were just ripping her to shreds. Did you see what she was wearing? I can't believe she's wearing that. Oh my goodness, she looks like such a hussy. I never wanted that for my girls. I did not want to raise girls who look down on others because they did not choose to dress the way that we dress. I have known some of the most modestly dressed women who were mean at heart, and they were just like snakes. They were mean. They would gossip about others. They would rip them apart. They were judgmental. Nothing was ever good enough. And it's all in an effort. Maybe you don't really have that standard, but you feel forced into doing it. And so you just get mad at everyone else that doesn't do it the way you are, because in a way you hold a little resentment because, you feel forced to have the standard, to do the standard. Maybe your husband wants you to dress like that. And, you've never really come to where you've come to that yourself, but you're doing it to either fit in or you're doing it because you feel other people will look down on you, which if you're in a church like that, that's not good. But I knew with my daughters, I did not want that going on. I didn't want them ripping people apart for not being exactly like us, looking like us, talking like us, whatever. So when I say talking like us, I don't mean I'm talking about not corrupt communication or not, swearing or cussing or anything like that. Obviously, we don't do that at all. But that being said, my girls are around those who do, and they very, very quickly, and this is the same with my husband and my boys, at whatever job that they're at, very, very quickly, they are known to be different. And you know how they're known to be different? Well, for my girls, it's because of the way they dress too, because they don't use strong language. That's how people know. In fact, Jason is in police academy right now. And if you know law enforcement, they often give like nicknames. Everyone gets a nickname, right? In law enforcement as a police officer. And within the first week or two, he had the nickname Father McMurtry because it was very evident that he was a Christian. And you know why it was evident he was a Christian? He's the only one who doesn't cuss. He's the only one who doesn't use strong language out of the 50 recruits or candidates that are in police academy right now. So everyone knows he's a Christian. They said, we're going to know that Jason's arresting someone like if we hear, get your flipping hands up, just like, because my kids don't cuss. So they won't drop the F-bomb. So they said, we're going to know Jason's arresting someone if we hear, get your flipping hands up. So it's very evident when people are around you, if you're a Christian, and that is the most evident thing is through your speech. So with my children, I've tried to teach them, it's okay to stand out. It's okay to be different. But that being said, they don't go around condemning everyone to their face, like you should be talking that way. And, language, I don't want to hear it, whatever. So, I've always tried to teach them that we do things a certain way, but it doesn't mean that every other household has to. So then let's talk about those who beat their chest about standards and holy living, yet they're awful to either their spouse or their children. Okay, so I've often seen this a lot in my life too. Some of the most hardcore people about standards, and I'm talking about like over the top standards. So like their women have to dress in basically gunny sacks, from neck to floor. They don't believe in makeup. They don't believe in jewelry. They don't believe in getting your nails done. They don't believe in any of this stuff, but they treat each other. They treat everyone else out in the world like garbage. And, there was a quote that I just read recently, and that's kind of what like spurred this whole post. And I can't remember who said it, but they basically said, show me a man who treats his wife well, and I'll listen to his preaching. And then it said, show me a man who's awful to his wife, and I don't want to hear what he has to say about being a Christian. And I completely agree with that, because your Christianity is best shown in the home. So you being a wife and mom, you are the first glimpse of a Christian wife and mom that your children are going to have. Your husband being a Christian dad and husband is the first glimpse of a Christian dad and husband that your kids are going to have. And what you are, they're going to grow up thinking of other Christians like that. So if you can't even treat your family like a Christian, if you can't even treat your wife like a Christian treats his wife, if you can't even treat your children like a Christian parent should treat their children, I don't want to listen to anything you have to say. And that's where, like with the outside influences, I have only ever followed the teaching of those who have godly fruit from the home. Because to me, I don't care what you have to say about anything if your home life is a wreck. And obviously the Bible agrees, because there's qualifications for a bishop. And one of the biggest ones is that he must have his house in order. And if he doesn't, then he's disqualified. So obviously God takes that very seriously too, because he says, if you don't know how to rule your house, how are you going to know how to rule the house of God? And I completely agree with the Bible, of course. So if a husband treats his wife like trash and he treats his kids like trash and he's just a horrible jerk of a husband at home, I'm not interested in his type of Christianity. And so throughout my life, all the people that my husband and I have followed or like gleaned a lot of wisdom from have been those who have raised godly children, who have good fruit, and their children speak highly of what went on in the home. Because show me a man who is a true Christian in his home, and he's a true Christian everywhere. Because behind closed doors is when the real you comes out. When you just let your hair down and you're around your children, you're around your husband, and someday those children are going to grow up and they're going to testify to what went on in that home. So I only ever follow those who have godly fruit and who are saying, yeah, my parents were in the home, what they said publicly. Like whatever they said publicly, that's what they did privately. Those are the type of people that I follow. I honestly couldn't care less about someone and what he has to say about Christianity or godly living if he's a terrible person behind closed doors. So then if you teach about femininity and grace, but you show your husband contempt and disdain, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. I'm not a big like podcast person, which is funny because I have a podcast. I don't really follow a whole lot of podcasts. I don't really listen to a whole lot. But I have noticed that and this really turns me off, some of the biggest trad wife, I hate that phrase because I feel like it's all such a facade. Because yeah, I'm not into the popular trad wife people either. But some of the biggest pushers of femininity and grace, I have seen them treat people that has questions in the comments, that have a differing point of view. I've seen them just rip those people to shreds. And so that really just turned me off to it completely. Lori Alexander is one such person. And okay, this is going to be worse sound. It's not going to be as crisp or clear, but it's coming through. Thank you, Martha. It's coming through the webcam. So it's going to be a little, I don't know, I think it's this Wirecast box thing that my husband has. It's horrible. It's like not been working for me at all. And then he had issues with it on his last live stream. So I'm telling you, it's that. So yeah, I think Lori A is such a person where she comes across very, very harsh. I've seen people leave Lori Alexander. I've seen people leave comments on her things, just kind of asking questions or throwing things out there, and she rips them into shreds. And I do not believe that most of her posts are done with love. I feel as if she went from being a very toxic person to her husband and kind of switched it around to like all the women who don't agree with her. I think that's just part of who she is as a person. So I have tried to be, and I have a lot of people who come on my post disagreeing with me. Okay, I get a lot of hate from a lot of different places, and I get hate from people who are totally. Actually, I will say this though, I have several women who would consider themselves atheists, liberal, not even saved. And they have come on my post to tell me that they follow my stuff because I fascinate them because I have a bunch of kids. And in some countries, anything over like 3 kids is a lot. And so since I have 8, I fascinate them, which I don't even think 8's that much, but whatever. And they have come on to tell me before that they appreciate that I treat others with differing viewpoints with kindness. And that is really what I strive to do. I've been on the receiving end for years now of just nastiness and people being nasty about me, people being nasty about my husband. And I never want to be that person. I think being bullied it can do one of 2 things. It can either turn you into a bully yourself, where you just get mean and vindictive and bitter, or you can use that as a teaching opportunity to how not to treat other people. And that's what I've tried to do with the bad in my life, because, we kind of have to take what life gives us, and obviously I know God's in control. I'm saying that a little tongue in cheek. But we could either sit around and bemoan our lot in life, wish things were better, wish things were different, whatever, or we can just roll with it. And so all the bad that has come into my life, I will say, like, there are some triggers for me with some of the bad stuff. So the other day I was watching a movie about someone with ALS. When I started it, I'm like, what am I doing? But this is around the time of year when I've experienced deaths in my life. February for one of my best friends, April 6th is coming up. My dad died on April 6th. And so I'm like, what am I doing? But I did. And I was literally, I don't cry very often. I was literally like bawling at the end because it went through everything that she had with this ALS. And ALS is a terrible disease. And so now, even after all these years, there are things that can trigger very deep emotional responses within me, mainly like painful stuff that's happened in my life. When it comes to like words from others, though, I've developed a very thick skin because my kids still love me and they still want me in their lives. And they only have good to say about the way that they were raised. And so those that have lied about me, tried to misrepresent me, tried to even talk negatively about this podcast, they can see that I have a family who loves me and cherishes me, and I have good fruit. I have godly fruit that's coming forth. And that's not a brag on me at all because I've messed up plenty. I'm not the perfect wife. I'm not the perfect mom. I've messed up plenty, but I'm telling you, this is why it's so important to get this thing down with the love. If you have love as the foundation, your husband will forgive a lot of mistakes. If you have love as the foundation, your kids will forgive a lot of your mistakes. If your kids grow up knowing that you love them, they will overlook a lot of the stupid things that you did. And that's at the point I'm at in my life. I messed up plenty. But I have kids who want me in their life. I have grandkids who I get to spend time with every week if I so choose. I've had, even my little grandson, Tommy 4, I've kept him now several times overnight, couple nights. I want to be involved in his life so he knows Nana, right? So, but when it comes to just like all of the things that, life is thrown at you, you can either take those things and you can become a bitter, vindictive person who is just out to get blood. Like, I have to see them pay. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that type of person. So it's better just to let people rail and make themselves look bad, and let your fruit speak for itself. That's all you can do. And so with me, I've taken the bad and I've tried to flip it into, okay, I'm not going to treat someone like this. All right. I'm not going to lie about someone like this. I'm not going to make things up about people like this. I'm not going to bully other people. So when people come on my posts, even if they're being jerks, which I've had plenty of, even if I'm like, why are you even reading my stuff? If they come on just to contradict, I still respond with kindness because I am not in charge of those out there and what they say about me. I am in charge of how I treat others. And so because of that, I'm going to treat others with kindness. And I've tried to show that to my kids. And you know what? If you are a bully as a parent, you're going to raise bullies as kids. It's going to come through. They're going to have that same attitude. They're going to be, if you are hateful as a parent, you're going to raise hateful kids. How you are, your kids are going to do like tenfold. And so I'm hoping with even all the mistakes I did, there's grace that covers those mistakes, right? And with my kids, I'm hoping that they don't repeat those same mistakes and they can be even better than me. And with grace, they can be. They definitely can be. So when it comes to the outside influences that I allow in my life and the voices that I allow in my home, it's going to be those that have the godly fruit. It's going to be, and you can see that the fruit always, everything comes to fruition. You always see the end results and you always see what goes on in someone's home. But yeah, if you look the part and have every standard known to mankind, don't watch movies, don't drink, but are mean-spirited and nasty to others, I don't want your type. I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. There are people that have every standard and known to mankind, like I said. But when it comes to their brothers and sisters in Christ, they're horrible to them. And there are so many verses in the Bible about just dwelling together in unity. Be kind, tenderhearted towards one another. Song or verses about just getting along in fellowship. And that is a huge priority with the Lord. And so my kids are also going to see how I am towards other Christians. If I'm constantly putting other Christians down, if I'm constantly talking negatively about them, if I'm constantly gossiping about them, tearing them down, my kids are going to see that and they're going to grow up with that same attitude. And then there might be a time where you want your kids to listen to other Christians because maybe they're on a path, they're in a fork in the road. And this way will take them down a way that you don't want them going. This way won't. Well, if they have enough people encouraging them, they might choose this way. But if all those people that are encouraging them, you've just been talking negatively about, and you've been bashing, and you've been ripping apart, why would they choose to listen to them then? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You gotta live your life in a way where, your kids are going to want to listen to you. They're going to want to listen to the advice of other people. And that's why having a good church is so important. I know with my kids, there's so many people in this church that love them and they know they love them. They would want to follow their advice. They would, because they love and respect them. Now, if they went home every week and they heard us just completely ripping apart all of our church members, why would they respect them? Why would they listen to them? Why would they want to follow them? So I don't care how many standards you have. If you're nasty to other people, I'm not interested in that. That's not how I want to be. That's not how I want to raise my kids. If you teach about keeping the home, are against public schools or homeschooling, and teach good things about raising kids, but you raise kids who hate you, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. Once again, the fruit of the home, it's going to come to fruition. And if your kids are just, if you're such a toxic person that you can't even have a relationship with your kids, can't have a relationship with anyone in your family, I'm not going to listen to your teaching on the home. I don't want that. My goal has not been to raise my kids until they're 18 and then bye, see ya, you're out of my life. I did it. I raised you to 18. No, my goal, first and foremost, is to raise kids who are saved early, who live their life in purity until they get married, who marry pure, who marry a good person, a good spouse, and who continue in the things of the Lord, and who I get to have a relationship with. Oh my goodness, you guys, it just gets better and better. When you start seeing things happen, it gets better and better, because I will always have baby fever. I just made a reel about it. I'll always have baby fever, but I have grandkids now. And so I get all the snuggles and the cuddles and the love all the time, whenever I want it. I can go pick up my grandson and I can tell Tommy and Jenna, go, I'll see you later. Go away, go out to dinner, go do something. I got the grandkid. So I am that part of me will never, this is why I have so many kids. That part of me will never totally die. Probably until I'm 80, I will love babies. I just love babies so much. So that part will never die. But now I got grandkids and I'm going to have more grandkids. And as more and more kids get married, I'm going to have more and more grandkids. So it just keeps getting better. Life keeps getting more rich and more full. And yeah, I look, and how I've tried to pattern who I am as a wife and a mom is off of those ladies who have adult kids who want them in their lives, and who speak of, my mom read the Bible every day. My mom, yeah, she messed up and she had mistakes, but I knew she loved us. And that's my desire, is to be that type of mom. My kids have no doubt in their mind that I love them. If any of you know my babies, I call them babies. They'll forever be my babies. My 5 and 7-year-old, they say multiple times a day, Mom, I love you. They'll just be running through the room. Mom, I love you. Anytime my kids leave, bye, love you. Don't die in a fiery car crash. Love you, love you. There's a million I love yous. Our kids know very much that they're loved. And because of that, they have overlooked a lot of stupid things we've done. The oldest is always your guinea pig. And you might kind of go over the top a little bit. You might kind of think that this is the first time you've done it. So you have no idea, right? Even if you're raised in a Christian home. And so that oldest, I think that's why they get double honor or whatever. They had the biggest blessing being raised, right? They had the biggest birthright, because they're like the guinea pig. And so, they kind of bear the brunt of all your parenting mistakes, right? So, but if they know that you love them, they will overlook a lot. If you teach about loving and respecting your husband, but you're mean and nasty to those who disagree with you or even have questions, I'm not interested in your type of Christianity. And I'm not. Even if you disagree with me, come on my post and disagree with me. I honestly don't care. Everything's in public. I barely have anyone blocked. If I do block you, it's because you've been really mean and you've just been nasty. You crossed a line and you were nasty. I don't want nasty people leaving comments on my stuff. That is you said something suggestive. You said something like profanity. I don't have a tolerance for that. That's the line. But if you genuinely come on my stuff and you're asking me questions, or you're even disagreeing with me, I love seeing other viewpoints. Mine is an Illinois, Midwestern American woman's thinking. If you're from Europe, raised in an entirely different culture, you're going to think differently than I do. If you are, anywhere, even a different part of the United States, you might think a little differently than I do. And I want to see your viewpoint because I know mine is not the only viewpoint out there. So I don't like echo chambers. I like when people respectfully disagree with me. I like having dialogue with people who disagree with me. I like seeing their point of view. But I don't necessarily like those that are mean and nasty to those who disagree with them. And I would consider a lot of the podcast influencers up there because I've seen their response to women who disagree with them, and it's not pretty. It's not laced with kindness. It's laced with a mean spirit. And you can pick up on this spirit. You can pick up on if someone has a mean spirit, if they're mean at heart. And I don't get along well with women who are like that. I don't get along with mean-spirited women very well. We just don't jive. So let's see. But yeah, my main focus when it comes to who I am as a wife and a mom is built on love. And the motto for the show is love God, love your husband, and love your kids. Because as I get older, that is the number one thing to raising good kids. That is the number one thing to raising kids who still want you in their lives after they're moved and out of the house and raising families of their own. They love you. And one of the biggest things is because they know your love for them. If you take love out, you can punish all day long. You can bring the hammer down. You can just beat your teenager. When I say beat, I mean spank. Okay. Some people have heard that. They're like, you beat your kids. No, okay. That's like, I grew up here. Do you want to be in? It's a spanking. Okay. Spanking, not an actual like boom, boom, beat someone down. You can spank your teenagers and pound your chest about how you do it and how we have all these rules in our home and we go down this checklist every day to make sure that these rules are, I enforce the rules and I bring down the hammer. But if your kids grow up and they don't see any love, there's no I love yous. There's no hugs and kisses. There's just, I can't stand you. Get out of my sight. You're disgusting. Parents can say some really mean things to their children. And words are very powerful, and words do hurt. And I learned this a long time ago, years ago. And I think it's because I'm a writer. So I know the power of words. You can influence people with words. I can write something and maybe invoke tears from someone else. I can write something and invoke sympathy. I can write something and invoke anger, because words are very powerful. And knowing this, you have to be very careful because how you're raising your children, first of all, your voice becomes your husband's inner voice. And I think men can put up with a lot. They can put up with responsibility. They can put up with having bills. They can put up with if they're a preacher, outside influences coming against them, as long as they have a woman in their corner, as long as their wife in their corner is cheering them on. She believes in him. She loves him. She respects him. And we have a lot of power in our tongue. And children are the same way. They can put up with a lot of stress as long as they know they've got people in their corner, people that are rooting for them. And so first and foremost, that foundation for that home needs to be love. First of all, why do you have standards in your life? Is it because you love the Lord, or is it because you're trying to fit into a club? Why do you not do things in your life? Same thing. Is it because you love the Lord, or you're trying to fit into a club? Why do you go to church? Just so people won't ask where you were, or is it because you love the Lord? Why are you raising your kids the way you are? Just to make you look good? Or is it because you love the Lord and you think his ways are the best? Same thing with your husband. You got to be careful. Why do you do things for him? Because you love him? Or I don't know, because Lori Alexander said you should. Why do you dress the way you do? Because you love the Lord, or because you're just trying to fit apart or fit in? It can go along with anything in life. What is the driving force behind what you're doing? And I believe the biggest force should be love. Everything should stem from there. If you love me, keep my commandments. So are the commandments required to get into heaven? Absolutely not. We can't work our way to heaven. Everything is dependent on the Lord and his sacrifice for us and, what he did on the cross, and nothing with our works. But if we love him, we're going to follow his commandments. And so same thing when you're raising kids. If you love them, Obviously, you want to raise them to walk in the Lord's ways because you believe that that's the best way. So that's why you're trying to instill character in your kids. That's why you're trying to instill godliness in your kids. That's why you're trying to instill holy living, because you truly believe this is the best life there is. And if your kids grow up knowing that you love them, they're going to overlook your faults. They're going to overlook your mistakes. They're going to overlook it when you yelled at them, when you were having that really bad day. They're going to overlook a lot if they know that you love them. So I think we're going to end there. But hopefully I didn't go down too many rabbit trails. And so sorry about the sound issue. Hopefully people don't give up when they're listening to it and the stupid sound. I'm very aggravated about the sound. Honestly, I feel like I do better when I'm sitting in the car on my phone with the sound. And I got these like cheap little $8 microphones. I finally bought a microphone, you guys, and it like connects to your phone. And I did the latest video I did where I wrote the letter to Abigail. I used that little microphone. It was really good. I was actually surprised at how good a little $8 microphone is, but I'm feeling like that's better coming through my phone than this setup. This fancy setup my husband has that has not been working very well. So I hope you all have a great week. I might try to do like another impromptu live towards the end of the week, possibly. Maybe on Friday. That's kind of my slow day. We do have a sledding trip on Saturday. And then next Saturday is a youth conference. So, but I might do an impromptu, another live just to make up for the one that I missed last week. But thanks for joining in. And I will let you guys go. And you know what? Go love your family. You're going to have bad days and you're going to mess up and you're going to be grouchy with your husband when you shouldn't have been. And you're going to be grouchy with your kids when you shouldn't have been. But if they know that you love them and you tell them often and you show them often, they will overlook a lot of your mistakes. And it's the same thing with you and your husband. If you know he loves you, you're going to overlook a lot of his mistakes because we're all going to make them. No marriage is perfect. And I've never claimed to have a perfect marriage, contrary to online chatter out there. I've never claimed to have a perfect marriage. My kids know I don't have a perfect marriage, but my kids do know is that their mom and dad love each other. What my kids do know is that they were raised in a home where they never feared that their parents would get divorced. They never saw nasty fights where we were throwing stuff at each other or saying horrible things to each other. I've not been the perfect parent, but you know what my kids do know? They grew up knowing I love them, and they grow up knowing I love them still. And they grew up and now they're seeing how much I love their kids. So love, it's the most important foundation for anything you will do. So go home, love God, love your husband, and love your kids, and love them well. And I might see you later this week, but if not, God bless, and we'll see you later.